Hey guys, Cohh here with a new video for you, a bunch of tips for V-Rising. Most of these are going to be for the early part of the game, but there are some tips for the mid and even later parts of the game as well. As a quick note, you're on a new channel. Hi! This is my new YouTube channel being run by a new team. They're going to be making content that is much more designed for a YouTube audience instead of my other channel, which is basically just a bunch of long form stuff. So if you like what you see here, make sure to leave a comment, or if you have any feedback, make sure, or send me a DM and let me know what you like or don't like, or what can be better, what can be worse, and all that fun stuff. So anyway, hope you enjoy the video.
And please subscribe.
One of the biggest tips I can give you for V-Rising is making sure that you know what you're getting into in terms of server selection and gameplay. This game is designed for small group PvP and PvE gameplay. The resource generation and all of that is balanced around a probably 2 to 4 players, kind of moving through the world at it by itself. Now, what that means is that when you start playing, you're gonna have some pretty big decisions to make. Do you want to play PvP? That is your first major decision. There are PvP servers. PvP is really, really fun for some of you and absolutely terrible for others. So first, your decision is PvP or no PvP. That's your big one. Your second decision, once you've made that, is do I want to play with other people? If you want to play solo, you don't need to worry about servers so much. You can do it all locally. You can set all your own server stuff, whatever. It's fine. I'm playing solo on Brutal. It's a phenomenally fun experience. I'm having a great time. So that's your next question. Do you want to play with other people or solo? And then finally, once you've picked if you want to play solo or with other people, and you've picked if you want to play PvP or PvE, the third thing to look for is the actual settings on the servers. V-Rising does a great job of giving players lots of customization in terms of what servers can offer. This includes how fast you get items, how fast items are converted into different crafting machines, how expensive items are from vendors, how much loot drops, how hard enemies hit, tons of things. So figuring out what you want from the game, like, yeah, I don't want to spend a lot of time harvesting, so let me find a server that has a lot more resource intake. I don't really want to do combat, I just want to do building. Let me find a server that has all the combat stuff jacked up. So it's that kind of situation. So again, picking where you want to play this game will dictate the experience that you have in it. Make sure you know what you're getting into and that you find a home that fits what you want to get out of the game. One of the best early game tips to give to players is to really focus and follow the main quest line. And when I say the main quest line, I should say the only quest line, because that's really all there is to do. And that's up here in the top left. If you are ever wondering what you should do next in this game, the answer is always on the top left of your screen. Now, you may not always be able to do whatever that thing is. In fact, you may look at your available bosses with the K key, and you may notice that none of the bosses that you have the item you need for your main quest. In those cases, which happen frequently, you will then need to work through the bosses to get down to where you need to go. So for instance, you can see that I have to upgrade my Castle Heart to level 4. That requires radium ingots, which I don't even have the capability to make yet. I'm not even sure if I have the boss that allows me to unlocked. So that's the kind of thing where you just kind of have to keep working through. There it is right there. So you just have to kind of keep working through the game to get to the point where you can then progress the main quest. But the reason that this is so important is because some of the best and most base functionality in this game is unlocked through the main quest. So if you've ever seen another streamer or one of your friends has done something really cool or has a really cool weapon you've never seen or stuff like that, 90% of the time it's because they got it somewhere in the main quest or the subsequent bosses that it took to get there. In V-Rising 1.0, there is an insanely good base moving system that is easy, intuitive, and fast. So especially at the beginning of the game, as you are working through all of those quests in the top left, many of them which require your base, understand that you can just put your base down wherever, work through all that stuff. You can even build your base out, and later you will be able to easily move it to another location. So what I did, for instance, in my game, is I started my base, I started the game down here, my first base was like here, and then once I got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm ready to start my big build, I decided I'd rather be in a more central location. I dropped my base relocation heart here. This is such a cool system. No way. It keeps the items in the chests that you move. This isn't supposed to exist yet. There's like multiple iterations before we get to this point that we have not gone through yet. I do. My kink is good QOL in video games. True story. One of the best base relocation mechanics I've ever seen in a game. So keep in mind, burn through that main quest early and move your base later when you want to. Another great early game tip is merchants. It can be very difficult, especially as a solo player, to complete armor sets. Make sure you get your merciless tools, make sure you have the right forge flooring. As you do pretty much everything in this game, you'll start earning different amounts of currency, copper, silver, and then even more. There are merchants on the map in the early area that do not require anything except you walking up and hitting F on them. You don't need to be a human form, you don't have to, none of that. So these merchants have all the T1 possible blueprints rotating through their inventory. Check these guys constantly. So it's the kind of thing where if you're just chilling in your base and you need some resources, well, both of these have a warp right next to them. So if you got a few extra minutes, warp down, check this vendor, see if you can fill in any flooring gaps, then just warp right over to here, do the same thing. And then if you get something good, truck it back home and go from there. Great. Another great tip for early game resource usage, especially for solo players, by using the copper you're passively getting throughout the world, purchase flooring tiles. There are flooring tiles for almost all different types of buildings. If you go into the production, into your crafting, if you look at them here, you can see that little word right under the title, tailor, forge, jeweler's chamber. And if you put those items on top of the flooring that they require, the types of benefits they give you are incredibly palpable. So in this case, if you put an anvil on a forge floor, you reduce the cost of crafting by 1/4, which is a huge thing. Now, it's also important to mention that if you don't see this little green check here, you're not getting the bonus. So keep in mind, the flooring does not only need to be in its own, the material or the thing you're using not only has to be on the floor type that it needs, but it also has to be in a fully enclosed room. So if you look in here, for instance, this room looks open, but actually it's just a bunch of these doors right here that are all around the area without doors in them. So that way it looks open, but it's still sealed off and still gets the bonus. So you'll see here, you know, I have a forge room with the forge stuff in it. We go over to here, you know, we have a little tiny jeweler's area, and this is all you need at the beginning of the game. Like, until you've made your big build, just make like little 1x1s and 1x2s and just make sure that you're getting those really nice bonuses in the top right there. But yeah, that's a huge tip. Make sure your items are on the proper flooring, because some of these items, especially early game, are very difficult to get. You'll be getting like 1 or 2 out of random barrels. So if you can reduce the cost of something from 3 to 2 or 4 to 3, you know, that's the difference between crafting the item or not. So yeah, flooring, the earlier you get it, is very, very useful. Definitely do that. The next big tip I would give people is, first of all, always get fish. And this tip is kind of an umbrella tip, because not only do I mean always get fish, because this plays into the jail system later, gets you more resources and all sorts of things, but what I kind of mean by always get fish is kind of the more global statement of always be looting, ABL. And what do I mean by that? There are 3 specific things in this world that you need to keep your eye on. There are harvesting nodes, like the one you just saw, which give you all sorts of great things. There are items in passive, like little boxes and boxes and barrels and all sorts of things. And those you will always want to get. It is very easy in this game to just focus on mobs and not really focus on the ambient loot, but you will get so much more loot in this game if every time you come to a location, you make sure to break down all of these boxes, make sure to open all of the chests, really make sure that everything that can be destroyed in these locations is destroyed. Do that to every location you get to, and you will start passively collecting all of those kind of, those just common resources that you're going to need for tons of the stuff you need later in the game. So always collect this stuff, always bring it back, and really kind of focus on
Must make room if I want to
getting lots of the common stuff. There's also a lot of mechanics in this game that let you convert lower tier materials to higher tier materials. So if it feels like you're kind of collecting a whole bunch of stuff that you may not need, it does really help to get all that early, so you're not having to go out and get it yourself later. Another great tip is that this game does an excellent job at easily telling you where you need to get resources you need. What you do is open your map, make sure to spend time running around, because not only will you unlock Waygates, which allow you to easily travel out from your base, but more importantly, you will uncover these different locations, and just by mousing over them, you can see exactly what you get there. Whenever you go out to get a specific resource, just remember to make sure to get all the other stuff around it too. And as you do that more and more and more, you'll find yourself just having more and more things whenever you need those recipes, and you'll find yourself going out to get more resources less and less and less. Also, as kind of a piggyback on this tip, running around the map early and exploring all of these locations is not only beneficial to item acquisition, but these vampire Waygates will save you hours of time as you build one in your base later from doing the main quest. Every time you leave your base to get a boss, you should be using your Waygate and going out, and that will save you literally hours of travel time. You'll pretty much always need to run back, because whenever you run back, you'll generally have resources on you that you need to get back to the base. So you will of course still be exploring, but when you're leaving your base, you almost always want to use a teleporter, because you'll never have any items on you that can't be teleported, and it just saves you a huge amount of time. So very cool stuff there. Another great tip is to plan on doing kind of resource harvesting excursions. And what do I mean by that? So throughout many times in the game, you're going to need a whole bunch of one or two things. You might need iron, copper, sulfur, quartz, scourge stones, grave dust. The best thing you can do is get all ready to go at your base. If you do have a warp, great, use that. But then run down to the location and basically just break down or kill everything there and come back to base. Now, this sounds like an obvious thing, but the reason that I'm saying this as a tip is because there are locations in this game where you will only need to do that like once or twice and you'll be set. So for instance, do you need sulfur? Go to the bandit sulfur quarry. There's about 25 nodes there that you'll be able to get it. Do you need copper? That's great, because there's a copper mine right here. Again, if you go out in the world to harvest copper, it'll probably take you 3 hours to get the amount of copper you can get there in about 30 minutes. You need iron? Cool, we got this haunted iron mine right there. You need cotton? Great, we got cotton all through this area in this little cotton belt here. So the short of it is, if you ever need like one specific thing, 9 times out of 10, it will be available in a resource somewhere out here. Clear out your inventory, go out there, break down and clear everything in the area, truck it all home, and you'll be good to go. Another tip is that all the different weapons do different damage types versus different types of things. So if you harvest with a mace, you will do more damage to minerals and you will get more resources faster. This is great when you have to go out and harvest and farm a lot of things. So maces are great against minerals. We have swords, which are great against vegetation. We have spears, which are great against creatures. We have axes that are great against trees. So make sure that you're syncing up your weapon types with your harvesting and resource acquisition to best maximize that. Also, another very good tip to know, your weapons will start with one ability, but as you go up in tiers, they will get more. So make sure to not only test all weapon types at all tiers, but make sure you test all abilities, because there are some weapon types where one ability may make that weapon for you. So keep in mind, there's like, 9, 10 different weapon types now. Make sure as you move through the tiers, you're using all the abilities so you can kind of find whichever one works best for you. Some other great tips for V Rising, especially at the beginning, you're going to get some themed storage relatively early. These chests are incredible. They will automatically hold certain types of gear. You just have to open them with F, hit the E key to put the items in, and then hit F again to close. So if you get in the habit of doing that, you literally can just come to your base, F, E, F, E, F, E, F, E, F, E, F, E, and your inventory is essentially completely clean. It's a beautiful thing. Now, unfortunately, the game doesn't have craft from storage, but by having a little central hub, it really does help. So good tip to getting all of your stuff in one little place. That can really help out there. Another great early game tip, as you get seeds, put down your farms as fast as possible. There is farming in this game. As you can see, I have a little garden on the inside of my castle, but you can of course have one on the outside. Farming is easy, it is intuitive, and it's very beneficial. So as you get seeds in the world, make sure that you are planting them and harvesting them regularly. And that way, when you start getting to the part of the game where you start making healing potions, strength potions, spell potions, you'll have all these resources built up that you can then dive into and go from there. Now, this tip for me was one of the most important tips for my enjoyment of this game on Solo Brutal. And let me again preface this by saying this was a me thing, but I have a feeling that a lot of you are going to fall into the same thing, especially if you play on harder difficulty. So I'm gonna give you this tip for you to think about. I play a lot of video games, and I play a lot of video games that are similar in some styles to this. In the large majority of those video games, and I'm talking even games like Souls-likes, your dodge always works when you hit it, and you plan your gameplay around that happening. So anytime something happens that's even slightly close to your character, you dodge it, right? That's Elden Ring, that's Dark Souls, that's most ARPGs that have a dodge. Now, here's the thing. If you play this game like that, you will get destroyed. If you play this game where every time you're slightly concerned about even possibly getting hit, you dodge, you will get destroyed. And let me tell you why. This game does not function like those other games. This game is more tactical, and this game uses its cooldowns as a resource instead of like a stamina bar or anything. What that means is that generally, especially on your dodge, the cooldowns are much higher. So when you dodge in this game, you get an 8-second cooldown. Now think if you were playing Dark Souls and you could only dodge once every 8 seconds. You would go, that's impossible. I would dodge one hit, and by the time 8 seconds is up, there'd be like 3 other hits I'd have to dodge, and I would just get hit by all 3 of them. Exactly. And that's what's going to happen in this game if you try to do that. So what do I mean by this? What is the point of this tip? The point of this tip is do not treat this game as a spammy dodge action game. Treat this game as a tactical, slow, put distance between you and your enemies, and most importantly, only dodge when you need to. Only dodge when you need to. And on top of that, strongly utilize weapon movement skills. There are weapons like the pistol that one of their moves your character. So when I hit T, I did that little roll. Well, that little roll will take me out of an AoE. That's huge. Spear also has a similar move. Sword does as well. Very important. On top of that, there are many counter skills. Now, the downside of a counter skill is that means you're not spamming like a damage or utility skill. But if you're like me and you have problems with a dodge cooldown, a counter skill may be exactly what you need to win those fights. I know players on the hardest difficulty that their boss fights last a really long time, but they use 2 counter skills and they're really good with them. So even though their boss fights last about 2 to 3 times longer than mine, they're easily controlling their fights, while I am having grit pulled to the death like slugfests and almost dying every time. So the big point of this tip is slow it down, do not spam your abilities, tactically use each one, and you will have so much more success in this game. Good luck. Okay, there you go.